At 0700 hours on October 4, 1943, Colonel Hubert Zempy stood on the concrete apron at RAF Hailworth, watching as mechanics fueled 52 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts for a deep penetration bomber escort mission into the heart of Germany. The morning air was crisp, tinged with fuel and the metallic scent of combat. Zempy, just 29 years old, had already accumulated 6 months of combat experience and 4 confirmed aerial victories. Today, he faced a staggering challenge. The Luftwaffe had deployed 180 of their most formidable fighters, Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 110s, to defend the industrial targets his bombers were assigned to hit. Every pilot climbing into a Thunderbolt that morning knew the odds. The P-47 Thunderbolt was a beast of an aircraft. Empty, it weighed 7 tons, nearly double the weight of the Focke-Wulf 190, which could outmaneuver it in a turning fight. The math was simple. The heavier fighter could not outturn the lighter German planes. In the first 4 months of combat, Zempy's 56th Fighter Group had paid a heavy price. 11 aircraft lost, 4 pilots killed, 7 captured. The Luftwaffe had already given the Thunderbolt a nickname, Jug, short for juggernaut, a flying tank incapable of traditional dogfighting. American bomber crews had observed this limitation firsthand. When Focke-Wulf 190s attacked their formations, the Thunderbolts often couldn't match the German fighters through tight turns. On June 26, 1943, the 56th engaged Jagdgeschwader 26 over France. Veteran Luftwaffe pilots circled effortlessly around the P-47s. 5 Thunderbolts went down, 4 American pilots died. Captain Robert Johnson barely made it home, his aircraft riddled with over 200 cannon hits, yet still airworthy. Victory had not been claimed. The physics of air combat were unforgiving. At 15,000 feet, a Focke-Wulf 190 could complete a 360-degree turn in 22 seconds. The Thunderbolt required 28. 6 seconds might seem trivial, but in combat, 6 seconds often meant death. 8th Air Force generals watched their fighter groups struggle and began planning to replace the P-47 with the new P-51 Mustang, lighter, faster, with greater range. The Thunderbolt program teetered on the edge of failure. But Zempy, who had spent 2 years testing the P-47 prior to the war, saw something the Germans did not. The Thunderbolt could not turn, true, but it could dive. Its massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine generated 2,000 horsepower. Its thick wing and reinforced airframe could endure speeds that would tear lesser aircraft apart. In a vertical dive, nothing in the Luftwaffe could match it. Zempy abandoned the fight the Germans expected. He crafted new tactics around the P-47's strengths: height advantage, hit-and-run attacks, never turning with the enemy, diving through formations, then zooming back to altitude to strike again. Through the summer of 1943, the 56th Fighter Group practiced relentlessly. Pilots conducted dive-bombing runs on ground targets, executed high-speed gunnery passes, and drilled energy management. Every pilot learned to think in 3 dimensions: trade altitude for speed, trade speed for position, and never, ever lose energy in a turn. By September, Zempy's pilots were ready, but bomber losses were accelerating. On September 17th, 8 B-17s were destroyed en route to French targets. German fighters attacked before American escorts arrived. The bombing campaign was faltering. October 4th, 1943 would test Zempy's theory in full. 52 P-47s, all armed with 2,000 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition each, positioned 8,000 feet above the bomber stream. Radar stations tracked the Americans as they crossed the Dutch coast at 0930 hours. The Luftwaffe scrambled 73 Focke-Wulf 190s to intercept. The Germans expected standard escort behavior. P-47s hugging the bombers, maneuvering slowly, easy prey. They were wrong. At 0952 hours, Zempy spotted the German fighters assembling 15 miles ahead at 18,000 feet. He rolled his Thunderbolt into a 70-degree dive. 51 aircraft followed. 7 tons of aircraft and ordnance accelerated toward terminal velocity, the massive propellers biting into the thin air, engines screaming at full military power. Airspeed climbed past 400 miles per hour, and the Germans never saw them coming. In 90 seconds, the 56th Fighter Group rewrote the rules of air combat. One by one, they executed high-speed passes, firing concentrated bursts into the Luftwaffe formations. The German pilots tried to dive, climb, turn, but physics worked against them. The thick wings and reinforced frames of the Thunderbolts absorbed G-forces their lighter counterparts could not. Aircraft disintegrated, pilots blacked out, and the surviving Germans scattered. By 10:03, 11 minutes after the initial attack, the bomber stream was safe. Not a single B-17 had been lost to fighter attack. Zempy's calculations were flawless. His pilots climbed back to altitude in 4 minutes and were ready to dive again. Gun cameras, ammunition counts, and pilot debriefs confirmed the impossible. 21 German aircraft destroyed, 8 probable, 16 damaged. 0 American losses. October 1943 became the proving ground. Each successive mission, Bremen, Munster, Duran, reinforced the effectiveness of diving tactics. Even when faced with overwhelming Luftwaffe numbers, the 56th relied on altitude, speed, and hit-and-run precision. By October 31, 1943, the group had flown 9 major combat missions, destroying 39 enemy aircraft in a single month. The once underdog P-47 had become a terror in European skies. Luftwaffe intelligence soon took notice. German pilots reported P-47s attacking from impossible altitudes at unmatched speeds. Traditional doctrine, gain altitude, dive, escape, no longer worked against this new, disciplined American technique. German commanders held emergency conferences. No countermeasures proved effective. By December 1943, Zempy was ordered to brief every P-47 fighter group in the 8th Air Force. His message was simple. The P-47 cannot turn. Stop trying. Use altitude, convert height into speed, strike fast, disengage, climb, and repeat. Think vertically, not horizontally. Some commanders resisted, clinging to traditional dogfighting principles, but the results were undeniable. Even in challenging conditions, like the low-altitude Osnabrück missions in December, the limits of the P-47 were evident. But clear northern European skies in early 1944 offered perfect conditions for the upcoming Big Week, 6 consecutive maximum effort raids against German aircraft factories. For the first time, American pilots could escort bombers all the way to Berlin, using modified external fuel tanks to extend range by 18%. Zempy's meticulous planning, climb slowly, burn off external fuel, drop tanks over Holland, ensured the Thunderbolts would enter combat at optimum weight, speed, and altitude. The math worked. The tactics worked. And the Thunderbolts were ready to strike deep into the Reich.
February 20th, 1944 marked the beginning of what would later be called Big Week. The 8th Air Force launched 941 bombers against Germany's critical aircraft factories. Among them, the 56th Fighter Group took off at 0900 hours from RAF Hailworth, 54 P-47 Thunderbolts, engines roaring, fully fueled, armed to the teeth. Their target, Leipzig, 400 miles into enemy territory. The climb over the North Sea was painstaking. Each P-47 carried not only its internal fuel, but also massive external tanks, adding nearly 4 tons to the aircraft's takeoff weight. Pilots had to manage every inch of the ascent carefully. One miscalculation could spell disaster. Over Holland, exactly on Zempy's pre-planned coordinates, all 54 pilots released their external tanks simultaneously. 2,1,600-pound fuel tanks tumbled toward the Dutch farmland below. Now at combat weight, altitude 30,000 feet, speed 280 miles per hour, each aircraft had enough fuel for 4 hours of operations deep inside Germany. Radar detected the formation immediately. Luftwaffe controllers scrambled everything available, Jagdgeschwader 3, 11, and 26. Nearly 190 German fighters climbed to intercept. The 56th Fighter Group assumed its position, high above the bomber stream, ready to strike. At 28,000 feet, 50 miles ahead, Zempy spotted the German formations. Without hesitation, he rolled his aircraft into a dive. The same doctrine that had dominated October's missions now faced a more cunning adversary. The Germans no longer massed in single formations. Instead, they broke into small, elusive sections, each difficult to intercept. The P-47s had to fight fragmented skirmishes across 40 miles of airspace. Lieutenant Robert Johnson engaged 3 Bf-109s over Brunswick, destroying one, damaging another, while evading the third through a daring high-speed dive. Across the sky, similar encounters played out repeatedly. Physics favored the Thunderbolt. Its massive wings and powerful engine allowed pilots to escape dives and regain altitude faster than any German fighter could manage. By 12:30 hours, the bomber's dream reached Leipzig. Anti-aircraft fire, not fighters, claimed 21 B-17s. The Luftwaffe had been kept at bay. The 56th returned to Hailworth, victorious after a 6-hour, 40-minute mission. 16 more air battles would follow during Big Week. Brunswick, Regensburg, Augsburg, Gotha, Schweinfurt, each demonstrating the P-47's newfound dominance. By March 6, 1944, the group faced its most ambitious mission yet, Berlin. No American fighter had ever penetrated that far into the Reich. 660 B-17s prepared to targeting both the VKF ball bearing plant in Erkener and the Daimler-Benz engine factory. 8 fighter groups, including the 56th, were assigned escort duty. Altogether, 673 P-47s would rise to meet the Luftwaffe. The 56th crossed into Berlin airspace at 11:22 hours. At 11:24 hours, Zempy spotted over 70 enemy aircraft 28,000 feet ahead, a mix of Focke-Wulf 190s and Bf-109s. The Thunderbolts dove from 33,000 feet at 460 miles per hour. In mere seconds, 6 German fighters were destroyed, scattering the remainder. Combat over Berlin was chaotic. Tracer fire streaked the sky, aircraft debris rained toward the city below. Zempy claimed his second, never turning, always diving and zooming back to altitude. By 12:30 hours, the bomber stream had completed its run. 11 B-17s were lost, all to flak. Not one fell to German fighters. The 56th had achieved what many deemed impossible. They had reached Berlin, destroyed enemy fighters, and protected the bombers. Zempy received the Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership and tactical brilliance, and the P-47, once underestimated, had proven itself a decisive weapon in the air war over Europe. 3 months later, Allied forces prepared for Operation Overland. Air superiority over the landing beaches was critical. The 56th Fighter Group relocated to Boxted Airfield in Essex, positioning for round-trip missions over the English Channel and into France. Their orders were clear: sweep ahead of bombers, destroy Luftwaffe aircraft before they could interfere with the invasion. From May 8th through June 5th, the 56th flew 32 missions in 29 days: fighter sweeps, bomber escorts, armed reconnaissance, and ground attack. The tempo was grueling. Pilots flew 6 days a week, often twice daily. Fatigue was constant, yet discipline never wavered. June 6, 1944, D-Day. At 04:30 hours, the first wave of 51 P-47s swept the French coast ahead of the invasion fleet. Their mission? Intercept any German aircraft attempting to reach the beaches. Not a single Luftwaffe fighter made it through. By 06:20 hours, Zempy spotted German aircraft taking off from an airfield near Ill. Focke-Wulf 190s scrambled, vulnerable during acceleration. The P-47 struck with precision, destroying 9 fighters on the ground, 4 more in the air, scattering the rest. By 9:15 hours, the 56th returned to Bokstedt, refueled, and launched again at 1100 hours for armed reconnaissance. Across the day, they flew a total of 97 sorties, claiming 23 German aircraft destroyed, 15 on the ground, 8 in the air, with 0 American losses. The invasion succeeded in part because German fighters never reached the beaches in significant numbers. The 56th mastery of altitude, speed, and aggressive engagement had neutralized the Luftwaffe's ability to strike the landing forces.
After D-Day, the 56th Fighter Group remained relentless. Their mission extended beyond escorting bombers. They became a decisive strike force in the air over France. Armed reconnaissance, fighter sweeps, and ground attack operations kept the Luftwaffe off balance. German forces were no longer free to reinforce their front lines. Convoys were decimated, fuel depots burned, rail yards destroyed. The 56th P-47s were not just protecting bombers, they were shaping the battlefield. The Thunderbolt's 8x .5 caliber machine guns proved devastating against both air and ground targets. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds tore through truck engines, fuel tanks, and locomotives, crippling German logistics. Every sortie reinforced one principle: altitude, speed, and precision were more powerful than turning dogfights. By August 12, 1944, Colonel Hubert Zempy received new orders. He was to transfer to the 479th Fighter Group, a struggling unit transitioning from P-38 Lightnings to P-51 Mustangs. The 8th Air Force needed his tactical genius to rebuild them. His departure from the 56th was seamless. Lieutenant Colonel David Schilling, who had flown with the group since January 1943, assumed command. Schilling fully understood Zempy's mathematical approach to combat. Under his leadership, the 56th performance never wavered. The tempo of operations remained extraordinary. Pilots flew nearly every day, often twice in 24 hours. Each mission required precision navigation, constant vigilance, and flawless execution of boom and zoom tactics. The group supported the breakout from Normandy through June, July, and August, striking at German reinforcements, rail lines, and supply depots. By the time autumn arrived, the 56th had become the backbone of air superiority in northern France. With Zempy at the 479th Fighter Group, he adapted his tactics to the P-51, a lighter, longer-range fighter. The principles remained the same: exploit altitude, dive on the enemy at maximum speed, never turn, regain height, and strike again. Zempy scored 2.5 additional confirmed kills with the 479th, bringing his total to 17 3/4. October 30, 1944, tested him personally. Flying over Germany in deteriorating weather and severe turbulence, his P-51's wings separated at 18,000 feet. Zempy bailed out, evading capture for 3 days before being apprehended on November 2nd. He was sent to Stalag Luft 1 as senior Allied officer, responsible for 9,000 prisoners. Even in captivity, his influence on fighter tactics was indelible. Meanwhile, the 56th Fighter Group thrived without him. Schilling maintained strict adherence to Zempy's doctrines. Pilots understood the mathematics behind their tactics. Every replacement was trained to think in 3 dimensions, to trade altitude for speed, to strike decisively and retreat. By the end of 1944, the group had produced 39 fighter races, more than any other 8th Air Force unit. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gaberski scored 28 victories, the highest in the European theater. Captain Robert Johnson finished with 27. Major Walker Mahurin scored 20 3/4. These men were not lucky. They were disciplined tacticians who had mastered the physics of aerial combat. In 1945, the 56th continued to dominate. During the Battle of the Bulge, they flew constant sorties, attacking German supply lines and intercepting Luftwaffe aircraft. During the crossing of the Rhine and the final push into Germany, the group's combat record only grew. Their last combat mission flew on April 21, 1945, just 18 days before Germany's surrender. By war's end, the 56th Fighter Group had flown 447 missions, 19,391 sorties, totaling 64,320 combat hours. They destroyed 677.5 German aircraft in air-to-air combat, the highest aerial victory total of any fighter group in the European theater. Notably, they had flown the same aircraft type from first to last mission. The P-47 Thunderbolt, once considered too heavy to dogfight, had become the most effective American fighter over Europe, not because the aircraft had changed, but because the tactics had. Zempy's innovations, altitude discipline, diving attacks, mathematical calculation of energy and speed had transformed the strategic bombing campaign. The P-47 protected bombers, enabled D-Day, and helped collapse German industrial production. By April 1945, other P-47 groups, including the 78th, 352nd, and 353rd, had adopted variations of the American diving tactic. Combined, P-47 groups destroyed over 2,000 Luftwaffe aircraft. Bomber losses dropped from 20% per mission in 1943 to less than 2% by 1945.
With the war in Europe over, the 56th Fighter Group returned to the United States in May 1945. The pilots who had flown hundreds of missions, who had mastered the skies of France, Belgium, and Germany, carried with them the lessons of combat, discipline, and mathematical precision. They were heroes, yet many returned to a nation eager to move past the war. For some, recognition came slowly. For Zempy, it was complicated. Colonel Hubert Zempy retired from active combat in 1945, but remained in the United States Air Force until 1966, achieving the rank of full colonel. Despite leading one of the most successful fighter groups in American history, Zempy never received a general star. Some historians argue his outspoken criticism of senior officers, particularly regarding outdated doctrines and reluctance to adapt tactics, may have hindered his promotion. Yet his impact on aerial combat was undeniable. Zempy's mathematical and physics-based approach to aerial warfare reshaped fighter tactics for decades. Vietnam-era F-4 Phantom pilots employed energy management principles directly descended from Zempy's P-47 doctrine. Altitude advantage, speed dominance, and the boom and zoom method became core teaching points in fighter training. The lessons learned over the skies of Europe were applied even as jet aircraft pushed the boundaries of speed, altitude, and maneuverability. The 56th Fighter Group's story did not end in 1945. After disbanding briefly, the unit reformed in 1946, taking on the latest fighter aircraft of the post-war era. F-86 Sabres replaced the piston-driven Thunderbolts, and later F-100 Super Sabres and F-4 Phantoms followed. The group transitioned from escort and ground attack missions to air defense, adapting to the strategic needs of the Cold War. Through the decades, the 56th continued its mission, training, readiness, and operational excellence. Today, the Wolfpack operates out of Luke Air Force Base, Arizona, where it trains F-16 pilots for advanced air combat operations. The spirit of Zempy's leadership, disciplined, mathematically precise, and relentlessly innovative, continues to define the unit. The Wolfpack's legacy is not only in statistics or medals, but in the lives protected, missions accomplished, and the evolution of fighter aviation doctrine. The story of the 56th Fighter Group and Hubert Zempy is one of courage, intellect, and adaptation. From October 1943's Proving Ground missions to D-Day, Berlin, and the final push into Germany, the group exemplified how discipline, tactics, and understanding the physics of flight could turn an ostensibly flawed aircraft into the deadliest escort fighter in the European theater. These men flew in conditions that would have broken lesser pilots. They pushed machines beyond limits, calculated risks, and executed strategies that changed the course of the war. Their heroism was not reckless, it was deliberate, informed, and precise. Every altitude gained, every dive executed, every enemy plane destroyed was a result of careful calculation and unwavering discipline. Even today, the memory of these pilots and their commander remains alive because stories like theirs are preserved. Their achievements are lessons in innovation, courage, and leadership, lessons that continue to inspire aviators and historians alike. The skies over Europe may have quieted in 1945, but the echoes of the 56th Fighter Group's engine roar, the tracers of their Browning M2s, and the calculated precision of their diving attacks have never faded. Hubert Zempy and his pilots proved something that few believed possible. A heavy, unwieldy fighter could dominate the Luftwaffe, not through brute dogfighting, but through discipline, mathematics, and innovation. The P-47 Thunderbolt, once dismissed as too heavy, too slow, and unable to turn, became the most lethal American fighter in the European theater. The Thunderbolt's victories were not accidents. Every kill, every successful escort, every mission deep into Germany was a testament to Zempy's genius. A reminder that understanding your tools and exploiting physics could overcome even the most entrenched doctrines. But these were real people, in real danger, young men in their 20s and early 30s, flying machines that demanded respect and precision. Their heroism wasn't just in combat, it was in preparation, in calculation, in the refusal to fight the enemy's fight. They made the Luftwaffe fight their fight, and won. And the story doesn't end there. The lessons learned by Zempy and the 56th shaped the next generation of pilots, influencing tactics in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Boom and zoom, energy management, altitude discipline, principles born over Europe in 1943, 1945, still guide fighter pilots today.
The Wolfpack endures. The P-47 may have been retired, but the spirit, innovation, and courage remain in every pilot trained at Luke Air Force Base. These men changed aerial combat forever. They turned mathematics into survival, physics into victory, and courage into history. If this story moved you, if it gave you a sense of awe at what discipline and ingenuity can achieve, do more than just watch. Hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to share these forgotten stories. Subscribe and turn on notifications because every week we rescue stories like this from dusty archives. Stories of real heroism, real people, and the battles that shaped the world. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Did someone in your family serve in the war? Did this story change how you see air combat or the men who flew it? Your engagement helps keep these memories alive. Hubert Zempy and the 56th Fighter Group may have flown decades ago, but through stories like this, their legacy survives. Their courage, intellect, and innovation remind us that even in the chaos of war, mastery of knowledge, preparation, and calculated action can change the course of history. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. And thank you for making sure the Wolfpack never fades into silence. The story of Hubert Zempy and the 56th Fighter Group is more than history, it's a lesson in courage, discipline, and innovation. They turned the too-heavy P-47 Thunderbolt into the deadliest escort fighter in Europe, proving that knowledge, preparation, and tactics can triumph over raw power. If this story inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale of real heroism and forgotten history. Drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, or if someone in your family served in the war. Every interaction helps keep these incredible stories alive. Remember their courage, honor their legacy, and join us in preserving the heroes of the skies.